Bible Personality Profile. Gideon. Most of us want to know God's plans for our lives, but we're not always sure how to find it. One common misunderstanding is the idea that God's guidance will come to us out of the blue, that it has nothing to do with what we are doing now. But if we are always looking around for God's next assignment, we run the risk of ruining whatever we're working on right now. Unfortunately, the Bible points to a kind of guidance that does not put our current projects in jeopardy. In the Bible's description of how God guided many people, we can see that often God's call came while people were completely immersed in the challenge of the moment. A good example of this kind of guidance is seen in Gideon's life. Gideon had a limited vision, but he was committed to it. His challenge was to obtain food for his family even though hostile invaders were making the crowding, gathering, and preparation for the food almost impossible. Gideon was resourceful. He put a wine press to double duty by turning it into a sunken threshing floor, hiding from the Midianites. Gideon was working in his threshing floor and God sent him a messenger with the challenge. Gideon did not want to jump into a task for which he was ill-prepared. The angel had to overcome 3 objections before Gideon was convinced. 1. Gideon's feelings of responsibility for his family's welfare. 2. His doubts about the call itself. And 3. His feelings of inadequacy for the job. Once Gideon was convinced, however, he obeyed with zest, resourcefulness, and speed. He dedicated those personality traits to God. Gideon had his weak moments and failures, but he was still God's servant. If you can easily relate to Gideon's weakness, can you also see yourself being willing to serve? Remember Gideon as a man who obeyed God by giving his attention to the task at hand. Then give your full attention to believing God will prepare you for tomorrow when it comes. Strengths and accomplishments. Israel's 5th judge. A military strategist who was expert at surprise. A member of the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. Defeated the Midianite army. Was offered hereditary kingship by the men of Israel. Though slow to be convinced, acted on his convictions. Weaknesses and mistakes. Fear that his own limitations would prevent God from working. Collected Midianite gold and made a symbol which became an evil object of worship. Through a concubine, fathered a son who would bring great grief and tragedy to both Gideon's family and the nation of Israel. Failed to establish the nation in God's ways. After he died, they all went back to idol worship. Lessons from his life. God's calling the middle of our present obedience. As we are faithful, He gives us more responsibility. God expands and uses the abilities He has already built into us. God uses us in spite of our limitations and failures. Even those who make great spiritual progress can easily fall into sin if they don't consistently follow God. Vital statistics. Where, Oprah, Valley of Jezreel, Well of Herod. Occupation, farmer, warrior, and judge. Relatives, father, Josh. Son, Abimelech. Contemporaries, Zebah, Zalmunna. Key verses. And he, Gideon, says it until him, O my God, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said unto him, Surely, I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. Judges 6 verses 15 and 16. His story is told in Judges 9-8. He is also mentioned in Hebrews 11 verse 32.